What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 106. I'm your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando underscore Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, if you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying the episodes of the podcast, please make sure you follow, rate, review, like, wherever it is you are consuming the podcast. Remember, you can also find the show on YouTube now. The video of this podcast will be on YouTube. And any requests, anything you want us to talk, any topics, anything you want us to discuss on this podcast, please make sure you email those to mindofmarsal@gmail.com. This is the final episode of the team previews. Like, we are finally here, the last team previews. And as I always do, I bring in my boy Tyler Buecher to discuss some football teams. Tyler, how's it going, brother?
Good, man. The finish line is in sight. We've covered so many different teams here. 28. We got our final four that we got to do to get us up to 32. Excited to chat some NFC South today with you and wrap up this fun series. I appreciate you having me on for it. It's been a blast going team by team, division by division, and giving a little outlook for this 2025 campaign.
Yeah, man, it's truly been fun. We've been, diving into every team, diving into all the moves. Like you mentioned, today we're going to be talking NFC South. If you haven't heard all of the episodes, we started episode 99 is when we started the team previews. There we talked about AFC, that we AFC East, that we went AFC West, that we went AFC North, AFC South, like that, continuing. And this is episode number 106. We're going to be discussing NFC South. But Tyler, before we jump into it, there's some news around the NFL right now, and our guy Aaron Rodgers finally decides to decide with a team. I mean, I think it was inevitable. I think this was happening. He was just kind of dragging this along, in my opinion. But he signed with the Steelers yesterday. What are your thoughts about this, man? Are you tired of this Aaron Rodgers news and waiting around and stuff, or were you excited to hear this news?
Excitement's not the word I would use. No, I'm relieved we no longer have to talk about it because we've been just expecting it to happen and just waiting for it to happen. The timing of it's curious. Like, why right now? I thought maybe we would have seen it closer to August, maybe. Um, but that's how the cards were dealt. Rodgers can't escape the spotlight of the news and being in the news cycle. So good for him. He got us all talking about him for another week. Um, I'll say last year with the Jets, it looked like towards the tail end of the season, he was really adamant about not getting hit. It seemed like that was his big priority, trying to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible. Curious to see how that unfolds with an Arthur Smith offense where we've got more of those like deep shots designed for DK Metcalf. Big boost for him. I think that's the big winner here, but also some of the underneath guys because we saw a lot of passing from this team, particularly in the short area where it kind of dried up the rush volume for a guy like Brees Hall specifically. I'm thinking of him with the Jets. I think that same thought process can be applied to Pittsburgh, where we may see less rushing volume and more checkdowns, more swing passes. It might be a small boost to Jalen Warren and a small ding to Caleb Johnson, respectively, to each of those guys, and maybe a minor boost to Pat Fryermuth, who goes, I don't know, tight end 18 to tight end 17. Um, that's kind of where my thoughts are. I think the big winner though is just Metcalf, and um, the big loser being Mason Rudolph.
I mean, were expectations really that high for Mason Rudolph? I don't think so. I agree. Like, I think Metcalf is a big winner here. I think Pat Frymuth gets a nice little nudge as well. Like, yeah, I don't think he becomes tight end one territory, but I think he goes from that, mid to lower tight end two territory to maybe a little bit of a high end tight end two with, there's going to be some spike weeks there, maybe a multi-touchdown week or things like that. But again, I think for the offense, for the team itself, I think this is a really good from a football perspective. I think this is much better than they were on Tuesday, right? Like given the quarterback room there. So this was a team that I don't think they need to ask a lot of Rodgers. Last year, I'm looking at the numbers. Last year he finished QB 16. I mean, he's a QB2 at this stage of his career, right? Like, I don't think he's going to enter that QB1 conversation. I don't think he's going to enter, I don't even think top 15. And maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't see that. I think this is more of a football move instead of a fantasy move for the Steelers. I think that this just makes them a little bit more competitive here. in that tough division that they're in. But do you agree? Like you're looking at Rodgers at what bottom end QB2 at this point?
Yeah, but when you combine that with their defense, I feel like we're probably looking at close to a 500 record once again, keep them out of the top 10 for fantasy. Sorry, top 10 of the NFL draft really keeps them in that purgatory of not ever being able to get a high draft pick. I don't get the move personally. I don't see it. But yeah, I'm with you where like back end QB2 makes sense because I think I'm curious to see how the divide and like the headbutting occurs between him and Arthur Smith, who wants to run the ball relentlessly, and Rodgers, who wants to pass the ball, but on his terms. So it'll be an interesting play there. I know for sure it'll be a slow-paced offense. That's something we can say with confidence. But that dichotomy there, that'll be something to watch these opening weeks.
Yeah, and I think you make like a great point, right? Like the Steelers have to figure out what they really want. Like I, I'm still stunned that they didn't keep Justin Fields. If we're being 100% honest, like to me, that was the move here for this team. Like if you're looking both short term and long term, potentially long term at least, I think keeping Justin Fields around would have been the move. And if you were staying with a veteran, just keep Russell Wilson. Like that's it, right? Like I feel like that's kind of the move here. I'm surprised too. Doesn't make sense. The only way it makes sense for me is that they're not ready to wave the white flag and tank a year. I think they feel like they can with that defense, with the run game, with they maybe they can compete. But I agree with you, like a little bit above 500 maybe in this division is where we're going to see them. They're always going to be grinding it out, but I don't see them. At least I don't envision them as a Super Bowl contender by any means, just because Aaron Rodgers under center. Like for me, this is just you're not going to be awful. You're going to be above 500 slightly here. That's kind of how I'm seeing it too. Anything else here as far as Aaron Rodgers? I look, I think we spend too much time on it. If we're being honest, like we've been talking about this for a while. Every Tuesday when I jump on with Ray on his show, there we've talked about Aaron Rodgers a lot. So I'm sure we're going to talk about it next Tuesday. That's every Tuesday at noon. Well, he does it every day actually, noon to 1 p.m. Check out Ray there. He does the live stream and the podcast there, so make sure you're checking that out. All right, Tyler. NFC South is what we're going to be talking here today. And this division, it consists of the Buccaneers, Falcons, Panthers, Saints. Last year, the Bucks won the division. They were 10-7. Falcons 8-9. The second place there, Carolina and New Orleans, both 5-12. Um, a lot to talk about in this division. There's some multiple coaching changes that we're going to discuss. I think it's going to impact some of these teams. But like in an overview, do you look at Tampa Bay and they won this division last year? Do you look at them as the team to beat in this division again in 2025?
I do, but I think this is almost a division that could be up for grabs in terms of it being one anybody could win. I think Atlanta was very close to them. I think they had was it an 8-9 record?
Yeah, 8-9.
8-9, thank you. So they weren't too far off. Bucks really got there despite having a very, very injured defense and a defense that didn't really live up to their expectations. There's flaws, I think, with all these squads. I think the offenses are going to have to carry each unit respectively. Maybe not the Saints, though. I'm squinting when I look at that one. But but the other three, I think, can at least provide some competent and some exciting games. There were even two overtime games between some of these interdivisional games matchups last year. Um, so that's my thought is just this is a division that's not heavily skewed towards one team. I think that's my best way to summarize this.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, right? Like I'd still favor Tampa Bay here slightly, but I think you could make a case for Atlanta. And if Bryce Young is finally able to take that leap forward, yeah, we're going to talk about him, but he kind of closed out the season on a high note, right? If he can pick up where he left off towards that second half of the season, maybe Carolina could be, making a statement in this division. Um, but I agree. I look at it as a bunch of eh, teams here, Tampa Bay being just my favorite one. So, all right, let's dive right into it. We're gonna go as usual, alphabetically order, which means that the first team we're gonna be talking about here is Atlanta. They added some pieces to the defensive side. I think a much needed. They lost some offensive line pieces. They lost some defensive line pieces as well. When you look at the draft class, it was basically all defense besides their seventh round pick, which was a tackle. Talk to me about the Falcons. Now, we obviously know it's Michael Penix time there in Atlanta. Are you excited about Michael Penix time? Are you looking forward to it? What are your thoughts here with Atlanta so far?
Very interesting team last year where they had a super inconsistent defense and very middling play from an injured quarterback. I think that's how you best summarize their season. Their defense was bottom dwelling and pass completion rate allowed, passing touchdown rate allowed, sacks allowed, rush success rate allowed. Just not great categories to be dead last or in the bottom five of. And they checked all five. All those stats were bottom five. Kirk Cousins, do you remember that week one opener? They had 0 snaps under center where Kirk Cousins was coming off injury and he had just zero mobility. That was a big talking point for the first few weeks of the year. He had the least drop back movement ever recorded in a game in that season opener, by more than a full yard, by a stat that Ben Solak was tweeting out. Um, I just remember that it being such like a static offense where they didn't have much going on. When I look at Cousins' season from a season long perspective, the first 10 weeks, and then there's week 10 where he got a shoulder injury. Those final 4 games were just downright disastrous, where the swap to Penix, I could argue, should have been week 11 after that shoulder injury. Um, yeah, I mean, like, I think this Atlanta team is really just ch closing the chapter on a very expensive Kirk Cousins contract, who has year one down into a 4-year contract that was $180 million, where he has the no trade clause in his corner, where he can dictate how that gets played out. Just a wild, wild event there. Then for them to spend a top 10 draft pick on Michael Penix, who came in and played pretty well over the last 3 weeks. They were against some inferior competition. Wasn't challenging, but that's not up to Penix. He played who he was called to play upon, and he did well. So I'm kind of eager to see how this guy does. He's a lefty. He's got some injured history in terms of mobility. We'll see how he does here under a full season, but he's currently slated to be the QB1 with Kirk Cousins being the most expensive backup right now in the NFL.
Yeah, that's an expensive backup right there. But yeah, I agree with you. Like I look at this and we're seeing now a new era there at the quarterback position for Atlanta. It's still like you look back at last year, Tyler, and it's they invested so much in Cousins, and then they went and they drafted Penix like early on in the draft. It's like it left us, scratching our heads. And I'm still scratching my head about this, but I agree with you 100%, dude. Like when you look at Cousins, he did not look right last year. Like he just did not look right from day one, right? It was from the beginning. Um, he just didn't look right. And sometimes, we talk about this, and I think you and I discussed this on the last episode when we were talking about like injuries and whatnot. Like it takes time at times to recuperate from injuries. He had a serious injury. He's also at the tail end of his career when you're thinking about age and stuff like that. Like, he's getting up there in age. That has to be taken into account. So, I think it's going to be interesting. I want to see how this offense looks with Penix. We got a little bit of a glimpse of that last year, but again, I'm not sold on him just yet. I think there's a lot of red flags and a lot of downside, and I just don't know if he has enough upside here. Do you think Penix is their guy of the future, or do you think that this is going to be a situation where they're going to be searching for a quarterback, in the next couple of years?
I wasn't sold. I wasn't really high on him as a prospect. He had a very, very long career to finally get to the NFL. One of those guys that, I don't know, was a 5-year or 6th-year senior. I think he's a true wild card. Honestly, I don't have a good feel for it. I'll just say that he looked good in the 3 games he played last year. He had an 84.0 PFF grade in that small sample. Um, I think drafters are also kind of sharing those concerns in terms of not being bullish on him. It's also a run-heavy offense that he's entering. But his ADP right now, quarterback 21, that feels spot on. He is playing behind a great offensive line. There's a great supporting cast, but I think there's a lot of question marks there, and they're legitimate question marks because a 3-game sample size is not enough to determine. Yes, I'm confident taking Penix as a round 10 selection. No, we're waiting much more longer for that. He's worth the swing in Superflex, worth the swing in best ball if you got some early Falcons going on, but uh, I'm leaving it open. I'm waiting to see. And I think that's okay. We can admit that we're waiting to collect more data before making a strong, I don't know, a strong answer into how we feel about this guy.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair take, right? I do think that we haven't seen enough from him in the NFL. The small sample size wasn't terrible. Um, it's just a matter of, like you mentioned, he is an older, like young quarterback, right? Like when he was a rookie, he was one of the older ones of his draft class. There. So I'm with you, dude. From a fantasy standpoint, it's a lower end QB2 for me. There are other
Yeah.
players I'm going to probably gravitate more than I do to Penix, but that doesn't mean I won't have exposure to him this season, especially at best ball. But he's not someone I'm going out of my way. I think that that's fair. Like QB 21, probably still a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of right. I'm more of the 24 to 26 range for him, but I'm okay with, I guess, 21 if you want to take some shots there. Um, let's talk about the running back here, the running back room in Atlanta. How well, okay, not tempted would be the wrong word here. Would you be interested in clicking Bijan Robinson number 1 overall?
No, I think Jamar Chase is the far superior click for that, purely just for upside and ceiling possibilities. I think Bijan may have had like his ceiling campaign last year where he had 14 rushing touchdowns on the ground, almost 1,500 rushing yards on 300 carries. This was in one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. They were 30th in pass rate over expectation. He also saw some great work in out of the backfield as a pass catcher too, 3.6 catches per game. Definitely elevated his fantasy floor on a weekly basis. I liked what I saw from Bijan though. I think he is the number one running back to draft in your fantasy leagues this year. I don't want to start talking garbage on him because I think he's fantastic. 20.1 fantasy points per game last season, RB3 on a per game basis. I'd argue a repeat of a 20 plus fantasy point season is likely in the cards here. Um, I think the question is, does he continue to be that guy and not get the rug pulled out from him from Tyler Algier from time to time? Algier's entering the final year of his contract. He really frustrated Bijan owners in 2023 during his rookie season, where there would be random drives, Algier would have the ball, or he'd come in during the red zone. Um, I'm curious if we get back to that just to keep Bijan healthy. That's a question and a concern I have. Outside of that, though, this dude's just fantastic. Top 12 last year in yards before contact per attempt, number one in lowest stuffed rate, so he rarely got hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. Top 10 in missed tackles forced per attempt. Good usage out of the backfield. Playing behind one of the best offensive lines in the league. A lot to like here for Bijan. I think he's a top three selection in drafts. You could argue if you want to go wide receiver over running back, maybe in a half PPR format. That argument has a bit more merit. I'm still going Jamar Chase, but I won't fault anyone for going Bijan.
And I'm with you 100% as far as Jamar Chase is concerned. We've talked about this on this podcast. We talked about it when we talked about, the Bengals and we did their team previews. Like Jamar Chase was my number 1 overall pick last season. Jamar Chase is my number 1 overall pick this season. But I'm on, and not to take anything away from Saquon Barkley whatsoever, but I'm on Team Bijan over Team Barkley this season. If I'm choosing between the two, like, and would be the top 2 backs I think most people would have in their consensus. So I would go Bijan. I think Bijan is the clear cut guy. I too have the same concerns as far as Tyler Algier. Like when you look at the numbers last year, Tyler, like Algier played in 25% of the offensive snaps. He had 150 opportunities. He had 137 rush attempts. That's not, like, you can't ignore that. Like that's not, those numbers are and sometimes they were crucial moments, right? It was inside the 20-yard line. It
Yeah.
was, as they were close to the goal line. So I think that's here to stay in 2025. I don't see it being any different. Bijan had 376 opportunities last year. Like he had an abundance of opportunities. I still think he's going to see upwards of 320 opportunities here. But if that gets cut down to 330, 340, that's, you're talking about 40, 30, less opportunities for Bijan Robinson, which is very possible. I still think he could finish as the top running back. I still believe he's going to get, 2 to 1, more than 2 to 1 of the opportunities in this backfield versus Algier, but Algier will be involved. And Algier does become, in my opinion, we talk handcuffs here. Like, in my opinion, he's a good handcuff to own. Like if you're drafting Bijan, I think Algier will be the next guy up here. Do you agree with that? Like, do you look at Algier as a good handcuff to own?
Yeah, he's a great handcuff down. I will say that we talked about Algier getting a lot of volume. He's not on that David Montgomery level of volume where he has standalone value, but he does have the upside to be a fantastic back if Bijan were to go down and be the number one option here in this offense. We've seen it from time to time where he's had the spotlight on him, and Algier's really shined. So I think he's a player to prioritize handcuffing if you select Bijan early in drafts, and if you don't, I think he's fine to be a guy to aggressively snipe from the Bijan owner, hoping that Algier gets his turn at some point.
And I love that you point that out because it's true. Like it's not the same running back because I'm pulling up the numbers here and you look at, Montgomery last year in PPR formats, 16 let me see, PPR, yeah, 16 fantasy points per game. Algier, 6.2. So like it's a 10-point difference. Like, yes, like he's going to be involved, but it's not enough on a consistent basis. I think his production, if you look at the numbers last year, his production was very sporadic, right? Like it was he had one big week of 19.8 fantasy points. He had another week of 12.3 fantasy points. But then the rest of the season, he scored fewer than 10 fantasy points per game. That's Tyler Algier. So, like, he's not someone you can trust. It's more of a handcuff. But even if you don't own Bijan, I think these are the kind of handcuffs, like you alluded to, like you're targeting in drafts, right? Because if Bijan were to miss any time, Algier will step into a big role. This is a back that they do trust and already has a pretty solidified role. So, I'm 100% in lockstep with you when it comes to this backfield, Tyler. Let's talk about the pass catchers here. And I actually got asked an interesting question today in the Dynasty channel in the Discord about, it involved Drake London, Marvin Harrison Jr., Travis Hunter, those kind of receivers. And I still view Drake London as an elite receiver. I know the quarterback situation for some might not be ideal with Penix under center, but Kirk Cousins did not look good last year, and Drake London still had a phenomenal season. I believe in the talent. I'm buying the talent here. So I do like Drake London. But I'll be honest with you, like I feel like Mooney is someone I'm staying away from this season. I'm not chasing last year. Outside of London, man, I'm not too excited about this group, but you tell me, do you see it differently this year?
Yeah, I mentioned they were 30th in pass rate over expectation. That's the third lowest rate in the league. This is a team that leaned on the run game, despite having a defense that was variable at best. They spent a lot of resources this offseason addressing the defense. We kind of skimmed over it at the beginning, but they spent a lot of draft capital there. They added some guys in free agency. Really like what they did in terms of trying to improve that defensive side of the ball. If that unfolds and this run rate sustains itself, there's probably going to be maybe a minor drop back in terms of overall pass volume. Kirk Cousins got by with some big yardage games. A lot of that came from Mooney himself. A lot of it came from London. I'm with you in terms of London being a guy that's, I don't want to say underrated, but there was a popular conversation of receivers that were going to be dark horses for number one fantasy finishes in 2025, with London being a popular answer, and I back that fully. We finally saw it last year. 100 catches, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, freed from the Arthur Smith offense we were talking about in Pittsburgh. Um, we just saw him do really well here his first year in Atlanta, where he didn't have to be held back by that type of offense. Um, where do I want to go with this? This guy is just, in my eyes, the ideal round two selection. He's going at that like 1-2 turn, often in like I'd say pick between picks 13 and 16 usually. Um, where I'm very content grabbing a Malik Neighbors and then London. That kind of combination would be a home run for me in a home league or a start sit league. This guy just an unbelievable amount of target share, first read rate, air yards, you name it. London's got it in spades. And he was really, really successful with Michael Penix to close out the year in those 3 games. Those two showed some magic together. So excited to see that over the course of a season. Very, very bullish on London's outlook.
Yeah, for perspective of what to echo what you're saying. So the final 3 games, 5 catches, 59 yards, 7 catches, 106 yards, 10 catches, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Look, he had like Drake London had a really big year. It was his breakout season there, year 3 for him. He checks off a lot of the boxes. He was a prospect that I was very high on. I believe you were very high on yourself as well when he was coming out of college. I do think he's underrated. he kind of falls in that Keenan Allen territory where you know what he's capable of doing, but you just it's not too excited, too excited. He's not Jamar Chase, he's not Justin Jefferson. But like, yeah, the top five finished last year in fantasy football. I think he's a top 12 receiver. I'm drafting him as such. I love that pairing. Like, I truly love that pairing. Like, I think that that's really, really strong. Um, yeah, I'm buying here. I'm buying Drake London, and then I'll say this in best ball formats. I don't hate taking a couple of shots on Mooney, but he's not someone I'm actively targeting or overly excited about. He will have some peak weeks, et cetera, but he's not someone that I'm going out of my way to target or build around by any means. I'm not going to have an insane amount of exposure to Mooney. Um, for me, it's Drake London. I'm all in on him again. Like I'm happily taking him in that second round. I think he's a perfect. I think he's going to provide you with a perfect combination of a floor with ceiling. Like I do think that he gives you that, right? Like
Hmm.
I think he's that perfect combination. There's several players that fall into that category for me. Like Terry McLaurin is one of those guys, like kind of in that mix. Do you have Drake London? I know you did the wide receiver outlook. So you have Drake London inside your top 12, right?
Yes, yeah, top 10 for sure. Very, very bullish on that guy. Mooney, I think he's an interesting call where I think I'd rather take swings in best ball.
Yeah.
Last year he finished wide receiver 38 on a per game basis, so that's outside the top 36. That means he's wide receiver four, put him in the flex category, 12.1 fantasy points per game. That's great, sure, whatever. It's also replaceable. It's also inconsistent, especially for a guy that's on 180 pounds. This guy is very bad at contested catches as well. He's got a 32% career conversion rate. So we got a downfield guy trying to win contested catches where he has no upper body strength. I'll
Uh,
let others chase that. I mean, he was very close to 1,000 yards last season, despite missing a game or two here. Um, I will say he does well with the overlap of Phoenix's arm. This guy is a very talented thrower. He's got a cannon. He can sling it down the field. So that combo looks ideal. I just think there's going to be a lot of inconsistency for a guy that averages about six or so targets per game. We're probably going to see a lot of ups and downs, and that's why I think he's best for best ball.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In a redraft format, I don't necessarily want to deal with that volatility. Like you look at it last year, he had a handful of games of sub six fantasy points, sub seven fantasy points in PPR settings. Yeah, like one game of 31 fantasy. It's like it's a roller coaster ride. Like that's what you're strapping on for. Like literally, you're gonna go up and down, side, side. Like it's not uh best ball only for me too, dude. I'm with you. I can't do it in a redraft. I there's other players I prefer in that range there. And like you mentioned, so he's coming off the board right now. I'm trying to pull this up here. He is coming off the board as wide receiver 47. I I don't mind clicking that, but I prefer Josh Downs that's going after.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel a little bit better about Josh Downs, Jaden Higgins, kind of to a certain extent. You can make a strong case for it, and we're talking best ball, right? Like, and I prefer Josh Downs in a redraft format than I do Mooney. So, um, we have to talk about the elephant in the room and in Kyle Pitts. Is it time, Tyler, to sit back and say he's just not the player we thought he was going to be? Like, is that is it time for that discussion? Like, he's not the player we expected he was going to be. And this might not be for everyone because maybe everyone didn't have high expectations for Kyle Pitts. I did think he was going to be an elite tight end. I thought when you look at his skill set, when you look at what he brought to the table, I thought he had all the tools to be an elite tight end. That hasn't come into fruition. He had over 1,000 receiving yards as a rookie. Didn't do well in the touchdown department, and it's been downhill since then. Where are you at with Kyle Pitts, man? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's been precipitously downhill, unfortunately. Tight end 18 right now in ADP. Drafters are sick of him. They know what they get here. And it's been what, 4 years? I think we've all kind of taken a swing and a miss at Kyle Pitts outside of year one. Last year, a 12.5% target share. That was just 4.1 targets per game. You can't do anything with four targets per game. That's totally replaceable. Enough of us have done this song and dance where we're just done. We're throwing our hands up. We're letting others take them. I am admittedly taking a few shots in best ball because this guy has the ability. We saw it last year to put up random spike games. I'm not going to pick him in any kind of start sit formats though. Um, this is just a ride I want off.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been really, really tough, man. Like you look at PPR points per game. Year one, he was 12th amongst tight end. Year two, 22nd. Year three, 18. Year four, 22nd. It hasn't been great. It could be worse, but it hasn't been good. And I'm with you, man. I feel like players like this, it's okay because you are getting you're getting a discount price when you take into account like the potential. But again, it hasn't played. It hasn't come to fruition. Like we have not seen it, and if it happens this year, I'm gonna be off the train. Especially from a redraft perspective. In the best ball, I will have exposure to him. I will take some shots, but not as my tight end one. Like he won't be my tight end one in most teams. He's going to be my tight end two in a lot of these teams. So keep that in mind. But you mentioned like the target share, like that's just not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. It's kind of gone down. Like you went 20, and, then 27, then 18, and then like you mentioned, what 12 and a half, 13, whatever you want to put it as it's just not good. And if you talked about the passing game and the identity of this offense and what they're trying to accomplish with it's not going to be helpful for Pitts. I do think there's going to be some big weeks, but I think those are not going to be weeks where fantasy managers are going to predict, right? It's just going to be random. And in that case, I think best ball is the best format for him here. But I've swung him. You said you swung him and missed once. I've struck it out with him, like completely struck it out. Um, and I'm not afraid to admit it, man. Not afraid to admit it here. Anything else with the Atlanta Falcons that we haven't discussed?
I'll mention this team is number one. Well, last year they were number one in highest rate of 11 personnel. So this is a team that ran a lot of three receiver sets. Ray McLeod was their slot guy out there on a lot of snaps and routes. Just a low A dot guy though, didn't really do anything in terms of moving the needle, not very fantasy productive. But what it tells me though is that not only was this team very 11 heavy, they were also very heavy in the overall target distribution here. The top three receivers there, London, Mooney, McLeod, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, all five of these players drew 70 plus targets last year. Not a single other person on this team drew more than 15 targets. It was such a huge difference with everyone staying healthy and everybody not rotating in and out like we see on many other teams. I wanted to make that note of this offense that it was very static in terms of who was on the field and who was not. So if you're expecting a Kaderil Hodge breakout, a Tyler Algier breakout, it's not going to happen barring injury.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's a good call right there of pointing that out. You're not investing in McLeod, right?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Because I know you mentioned he was on the field a lot and stuff. I just wanted to make sure that the listeners knew that neither of us are invested in McLeod. All right, ready to move on to the Carolina Panthers here?
Yes, sir.
All right, so this is a team that looked better, right?
Fun one, yeah.
A fun way. It looked better towards the end of last season. Bryce Young, after just shitting the bed as a rookie and not looking great early on in the season, kind of turned a leaf there. They've made some changes here, right? They've added a lot of pieces here. When you look at this, they've added some defensive pieces, much needed defensive pieces here. They added Rico Dotto in the backfield. They drafted Ted McMillan there. So they've done I think they've done a pretty good job this offseason, with building and filling in some holes that they had. What are your overall thoughts with what the Panthers have done this offseason and kind of what they did in their draft?
I like what Dan Morgan's been doing as the general manager for them.
Yeah.
His first year, 2023, they had a two-win season. Not ideal. So he takes that team over in 2024, doubles their win rate. They've got a five win record here. Third place finish in the division, going 2-4 in the NFC South. The offense struggled greatly. Yes. We saw Bryce Young get benched after two games. Yes, but we did see him turn it around. Weeks 8 through 18, he looked a lot better. He was more middle of the pack in terms of quarterback production from several different metrics rather than bottom dwelling, which is a huge step forward than what we saw from year one and weeks 1 through 2 of 2024 relative to the back half of this past season. So big step forward for Bryce Young. We saw Dan Morgan's first offseason. They heavily addressed the offensive line. They threw a lot of resources in free agency at the guards position. They've really just invested in keeping Young upright and healthy. The second offseason, they talked about wanting to get a lot of investment in the defense and getting him some weapons. Um, they did that with weapons. They spent top 10 draft pick on Ted McMillan. That's now three straight drafts. They spent top 40 draft capital at the wide receiver position. Jonathan Mingo, see ya. Enjoy your time in Dallas. He didn't last long. Xavier Legette, one of the least efficient wide receivers last year in multiple metrics. Looks like a bust. Looks like a slot option kind of weapon now. Um, so now they're doing the reroll here. They're doing it with McMillan, who's a 6'4", 220 wideout, basically their version of Mike Evans. Excited to see how he does here. When you throw in the running back position, brutal. Jonathan Brooks came back late in the year, only to re-tear his ACL again. Not expected to play at all in 2025. So they added guys like Rico Dowdle, who had 1,000 rushing yards in Dallas last year. They added Trevor Etienne in round four. All these guys to go along with Chuba Hubbard, who got a mid-season contract renewal last year because he was doing so well. I think I'm positive. I think I'm a Panthers fan this year. I think I'm excited to see what this group does. They're fun to root for after going from the bottom. Like it's tough. A team that goes with two wins, it's not an overnight process. But I really like what Dan Morgan's done in terms of investing in the offensive line trenches, the defensive line trenches, and then getting some weapons this offseason for their young quarterback to hopefully take a step forward. That's where I am with it.
Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah, you're going with the Panthers this year. Let's go. So I agree with you. They've done a really good job like rebuilding here, right? And it comes like you said, it comes in the trenches, and he's done just that. They added a free agency as well. A lot of defensive linemen here when you look at it, and I I like what they've done. My issue is, Tyler, I'm still not a believer of Bryce Young just yet. Yes, he looked better. Yes, he was playing better. But I got to see it on a consistent and a full season basis. Like before I believe in it and before I see it happening, I still think that, the verdict is out on him. I don't want to say he's a bust. I don't want to say he's, going to return value at where he was drafted number one overall there. Um, I like that they continue to swing at these receivers, right? We kind of seen this in the past. Other teams have done it. We saw Detroit do it for a while in years past, where until they got Calvin Johnson. I did it. They
Yeah.
did it. They swing and miss a lot. I believe they
Yes,
did.
yes.
I remember that. There was some interesting prospects. They never panned out. Kind of reminds me of the Detroit Lions when they did that. Um, I like Ted McMillan myself. I think he has a lot of potential. You made the comp there of Mike Evans. He does really, guy kind of look like Mike Evans when you look at all of his strengths there. You can't count out the old man Adam Thielen. Like he's someone that is going to continue to be a security blanket there for Bryce Young. Uh, you mentioned something like about Hubbard, right? Getting his, extension. I think like that was smart of them because he looked really good last year, man. Like he performed at a very high level there. And then adding Rico Dowdle, drafting Trevor Etienne, they're continuing to add pieces to the offense, man. So I think they're doing the right moves, and I think that that's what you got to do, right? When you're getting a franchise that's at at the bottom and you're trying to build it up. And I agree with you. Dan Morgan has done a really, really good job here at rebuilding. But this is still a team, in my opinion, that's a work in progress. They're still rebuilding. They're not there yet. They have still a lot of holes. But I'll tell you this: they plugged a lot of deficiencies. They plugged those this season, I think, with what they've done in free agency and in the draft. Position by position here. Let's go quarterback. I know you and I have a little bit of differences of opinion when it comes to Bryce Young. I'm still out on him. Um, but are you buying?
It's fair to question. We haven't really seen a huge season. Last year, over weeks 8 through 18, though, he averaged 18.6 fantasy points per game. That's quarterback 15 status, not bad. Top five in average depth of target during this period, so he wasn't just dinking and dunking. So he was throwing deep down the field. And despite throwing deep down the field where there's more challenging and low percentage throws, he was top 10 in lowest turnover worthy throw rate. So he was doing well with it. Um, Now improved pass catching unit. They talked Hunter Renfrow out of retirement, brought him back to add another slot redundant player there with Thielen. I'm not out. I'll say that. The Saints defense, I think, is an issue. The Bucks defense, I think, is an issue. The Who's the other guy? The Falcons,
The Falcons.
they've got a lot. They're a question mark to me, actually. The Falcons are a complete question mark because there's so much turnover there. But my point being, the NFC South has a lot of weak defenses, and with 6 of your games against them, maybe we just see Bryce beat up on those weaker opponents. Um, you don't need to draft Bryce as like anything higher than your quarterback two in a super flex format. Like we don't need to say that. You guys know that. Um, Let me look at where he is going right now because he's
QB
actually somebody
23.
the very tail end of
Yeah.
QB2. I'm cool with that.
I I can't do it. In a super flex two quarterback league, it would have to be a 14 team league for me to feel comfortable with him as my QB2. I prefer him as a QB3. Because like when you look at this, you got Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, Cam Ward all going behind him. I feel better about Stafford. I'm not big on Geno Smith, but I'll take Smith over Bryce Young. I prefer the supporting cast there. Now, question. They're going two picks, like, or not two picks, but like one round. Yes, it's one round. So round 13 for Michael Penix, round 14 for Bryce Young. Front end. Who would you rather have of the two?
Penix or Young? That's a good question. I would actually probably prefer Young, I think,
Okay.
because I think the Falcons are going to be super run heavy. Panthers, I think, have a bit more variability with that. It's a good question, and I think it's going to be very close. I'll also mention, like, this Bryce Young discussion makes me want to say that it would really only be in three quarterback builds that I would be interested in him. I wouldn't really be, even if I went with like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, I wouldn't want Bryce Young as my QB2. I'd rather have somebody else. But in a three QB build where, let's say I don't take my first one until JJ McCarthy, then I'd be cool with something with him, Bryce Young, and uh, Cam Ward, something like that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I would hate that. Um, but I think
Well,
that's a good point, right? Like it's a three quarterback build where you got one anchor and then two guys that you're going to be kind of playing matchups. That kind of the way you're looking at it.
not necessarily.
No?
I think there's a lot more variability when you wait at the QB positions. Like a guy like McCarthy, I think it's going to be very, very good, but I don't know if he would be the anchor guy. Um, well, maybe he would.
I
Maybe I'm
think he's
selling him
an I
short.
think he's an anchor, but
Yeah, maybe I'm selling him short. Yeah, yeah. Okay, let me walk that one back a little bit. Sure. Yeah, I think most of our starts in that situation with McCarthy, Young, and Ward, the majority should be filled out by McCarthy of the optimized starts in the best ball format.
see, okay, and if you don't feel okay, and if you're listening to this and you don't feel like McCarthy's your anchor, so I guess what I meant to say is you have one anchor quarterback and then you have two guys that you're going to be swapping a lot. Like that's kind of how I would do it with Bryce Young, but I would get two other quarterbacks in that similar range, not too far apart, where you basically play matchups really. Um, and I view McCarthy, and I'm sorry for those who are confused right now. I view McCarthy as an anchor because I do think like he's in that range, like where I'm okay with him as my QB1. Am I ecstatic about it? No. But am I okay with it? Sure. Trevor Lawrence is also in that mix. Like there's guys that have volatility in that mix, you know? Um, so yeah, that's that there. Let's talk about the receiving group. We've talked about it a little bit, but McMillan, where are you at with him as far as in the redraft and best ball dynasty? Like whatever you want to discuss here, but is he someone that you're comfortable with in a redraft format as your, a flex option, wide receiver three? Where are you at with him?
Yeah, he's going off the board a bit earlier than that. I think he's in
Yeah.
the 30s actually, if I'm not mistaken. 39 overall. So you will have to be paying a steep price for him. He's wide receiver 22. That said, we saw like let me go back to those weeks 8 through 18. It was a very well even distributed target share that Bryce Young had over this period. It was led by Adam Thielen, 21.6, Xavier Legette, 18.6, Jalen Coker, 17.5. So all three of these guys right around that 20% mark. Now we throw in a huge wrench in that in McMillan, who I envision being the immediate target share leader, maybe not a dominant target share leader, given the way that Bryce Young likes to spread the ball around. I think a reasonable expectation for projections is like 23 to 25%. And I think that's fine to say. Um, I bet the over on his receiving yardage mark at 800 yards earlier this offseason just because this guy's been ultra productive at every turn at Arizona, averaged over 100 yards per game each of his final 2 years, cleared the 1,000 yard mark in the process. Great at yak after the reception, great at contested catches, uh, extremely high marks in yards per route run, which are generally a harbinger for great success at the NFL level. And then we have the fact that this team just really needs a wide receiver one, somebody that Young can go to on third and long or on first downs, or just that guy that he can lean on when pressured. And I think McMillan's that guy that can win at multiple levels. He can be a guy that really just kind of jumps in and has top 24 upside. I like the buy at wide receiver 22. I'm not aggressively targeting him there, but I will be mixing him and matching him into my portfolio for sure.
And I agree with you as far as the 23, 23 plus target trade. You think it's safe to say anywhere between 6 and 8 targets per game?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'd
I
even move that to 7 to 9.
Yeah, like a floor of like 7 to 9. I think that's fair. And that kind of production could give you that, top 24, top or not production, that type of opportunity can get you in that 20 top 25 range at the wide receiver position. Um Yeah, I'll with my draft. Okay, so this is the thing with my drafting style. I may have him as a wide receiver 3. I know he's going ahead of that, but I like as far as he's going as top 22. But I may have him as wide receiver 3. I'll be honest, I do prefer him as a wide receiver 4, and I think in redraft formats you might be able to get him a little bit lower than he's going in some best balls. Do you agree with that?
That's a hell of a great point. Home leagues, this guy's going to be like round 6, round
Yeah,
7, not the beginning of round 4 like in best ball.
yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, and there I would feel even more comfortable investing because I'm still investing in where he's going now in best ball, but I feel like that's where I'd be more invested in. And at that point, you can take him as a flex instead of having to take him as wide receiver 2 or 3, depending on your drafting style. So I'm buying there. Are you buying any of the secondary pieces, the older men in this team, Thielen, Renfro? Like, are you in on any of these? You know, uh, these receivers.
Tough to,
I was
man.
trying to find a good word to describe it. I'll be honest, I lost for words there.
These elder statesmen. No, I don't think I will be. I'm trying to pull up where we drafted McMillan in our staff draft that's currently underway, and I can't find his name for some reason. So, oh my God, he went round 7. So that's exactly the point we're trying to make here.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And, and do you know what wide receiver like that team has him as? Is it the flex, fourth, fifth, like that? Just for the exercise, really, since we're already doing that. Um,
That's our boy Russ. Russ did that as his
all
wide
right.
receiver 3.
Oh, there you go. All right, so that's fine. But like wide receiver 3, so that tells you he went with a different style, right? Like it goes round 7, wide receiver 3. Pretty sure he has a quarterback, at least 2 running backs, and maybe even a tight end. Like we might.
Correct.
That's exactly what. See, like it's just depending on draft style. So if you are someone that's a little bit more aggressive at the receiver position early on, Tech could easily be your wide receiver 4. Like that could easily happen here in a redraft setting. I'm with you. I'm out on the old men.
Yeah.
I'm not buying into the retirement home, guys. I'm just not doing it. Can there be some sparks early on? Sure. Look, if this is the way I would do it, if you invest in Thielen and he starts off hot, so like that's what I would be doing here. Um, but
Mm.
nah, I'm not gonna be invested there. Let's talk about
Uh,
the backfield. Oh, go.
yeah.
You have
And I'll
something?
just say that I'll just say that I mentioned all the target shares being really close between these guys. I think them we could almost drop like 2 to 3% from everybody, and it's just going to be a jumbled mess. So redraft wise, it's going to be a headache. I don't mind the idea of if you get an early draft selection of McMillan to later tack on one of these guys and go with the Panthers build a stack in some best ball tournaments, but that's it. That's it. No
Yeah.
tight ends either. This is a mess here too.
Yeah, I felt bad not talking about it, but I'm looking at it, it's like Tommy Tremble. I'm trembling just thinking about it. That's it. We're done, bro. Like we're done. It's not gonna happen. Uh, and, and then Sanders just not that guy either. They did draft Mitchell Evans, but that's a fifth round tight end. No, sorry guys, not for me here. Chuba Hubbard though, where are you at with him? Because I feel like he's interesting. He finished as running back 12 last year, in PPR scoring. When you look at his current ADP, he's coming off the board as it's always tough to just finding him here. Pulling it up here, man. I'm trying to see here if you could get it. I do not see his name at all here.
What are you looking for?
Chuba Hubbard.
18, RB 18 and ADP.
There you go. He was right there between Calvin Ridley and Joe Burrow, and I missed that. So he's RB 18, Tyler. Round five. Where are you at? Are you investing in him this year? Like, is he someone that you feel is appropriately priced, or do you think there's more potential there?
Yeah, he averaged 20 plus opportunities per game last year. He was number four among all backs in rushing yards over expectation per attempt. That's phenomenal. To see a Panthers running back do that well in that metric blew my mind. He averaged 17.3 fantasy points per game in matchups without Jonathan Brooks, who again won't be in the fold here. I'm buying. Yeah, I think he's a great price there at a certain window where you can go with an anchor back, go receiver X3, and then go back to running back in round five. Or if you do a zero RB build, don't mind him at all as my RB1. I mean, you mentioned it, top 12 potential, and I think this offense has just got better in the offseason. So I'm very confident and very comfortable clicking him in various types of builds.
I think it's also sneakily involved in the passing, right? 3.7 targets per game. It's not an abundance, but it's a decent amount of targets there for someone who averaged 20.3 opportunities per game, like you mentioned. Yeah, I think it's a good buy. I think he's a safe floor play. I'm not concerned about Rico Dowdle. I've been asked that question. I'm not concerned about Rico Dowdle myself. I think this is Hubbard's backfield. Dowdle looks like a just a depth piece for this offense. After they knew that Brooks is unlikely to play or not going to play this season.
Yep.
Um, that's really what I view Dowdle as. I don't view him as a threat whatsoever. Do you? Do you view him as a threat?
No, 1,000% I agree with
Okay.
you. You can see it also in the contract. It was just
Mm.
over $2 million, a 1 year deal. This guy got 1,000 yards randomly with the Cowboys last year in a lost season. I think you nailed it where it's the insurance piece, knowing that Jonathan Brooks won't be around all of 2025.
Yeah. Anything like if are you looking to handcuff? We've talked about handcuffs here. Are you looking to handcuff this situation?
No, but I don't mind some late swings on Dowdle because he's going like round 16 or so
Okay.
in underdog. I don't mind some swings on him in the event Hubbard were to get injured, but I'm not handcuffing. They would be
Yeah.
standalone plays on teams without Hubbard.
I agree with that right there. Like that's the perfect way to describe that there. Anything else here that we haven't discussed?
Now we can move on.
The Saints is the next team on the list here, Tyler. And we have a new head coach in town here, Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator here as well. The team, they lost Derek Carr to retirement. He came out and said that he knew that he was going to miss time. He didn't want to take money from the team, all this stuff. Very nice of Derek Carr, leaving a very undesirable, and like that's the way to situation here in New Orleans. I I've come out and said I don't think I'm going to be all that invested. Yes, maybe I'll have a piece here or there, but this is one of those teams that I look at, kind of the same way I look at, to a certain extent the Browns. Is like
Hmm.
outside of maybe one or two components, I'm not too interested in. Talk to me about this team. I look at, they added Brandon Cooks. They added some offensive lines, some defensive of line here, but this is one of those teams that I look at and I just think that it's going to be tough to watch this season. Talk to me about the Saints, what they've done, what your thoughts are. Do you like what they've done here?
Do I like what they've done? I think the Derek Carr retirement was definitely not expected. They were ready for Ryan Ramczyk to retire. They expected
Yes.
it. That was not a shocker. To see Derek Carr do it right after the NFL draft was a bit of a shock. I think they were not expecting that for sure. But he chose to take the money and run, cut ties with the rest of the money he was owed. I think he took 30 million or so just to walk away, and basically avoid surgery and rehab. Spend some time with his kids, whatever. Do it. Enjoy a retirement car. Um, they let MVS walk. They let go of a guy on the interior offensive line, Lucas Patrick. They did bring in Brandon Cooks, a little bit of a poetic signing after starting his career there and with the Saints. Re-signed Juwan Johnson. I thought that was a great get. 3-year, $30 million contract. They want to use him quite a bit, especially telling with Taysom Hill. I think he's 35 or 36 years old. He had a December torn ACL. So there's a chance we don't see him for the full calendar year until December of 2025, which makes him off the fantasy radar entirely. Um, just in time to come up back for fantasy playoffs and make everybody's life hell.
Oh, I'm not looking forward to that at all. It's gonna be the do we pick them up off of waivers? It's like
Yeah,
no, let's
it's
not.
the battle of remaining fab. Yeah,
It's not gonna happen. It's not. Remember, it takes time sometimes for these players to get back to speed. So if he's back in December, let's wait until 2026 to discuss Hill Tyler.
yeah.
Um,
It's fun though. I like Tyler Shuck. I think he's an interesting prospect. Let me rephrase this. Last I don't like Tyler Shuck. Uh, Last year's quarterback performance from last year between Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner. I'll have a graphic in the article that accompanies this. It was the worst in the league, like downright disaster. So to bring in anybody else other than Rattler and Hayner makes me excited. They're quote unquote making this a position battle. Shuck should win it. He's got the capital. He's got a very live cannon for an arm, so he can make those downfield throws that we like for guys like Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave. Um, there's some excitement there. He's also very athletic. I think he's got a 9.7 RAS, relative athletic score. So this guy can move around too. Listen, we were just dunking on Bryce Young. We could dunk on Tyler Shuck if we want to. I'm not going to defend and keep up for him too much, but he's QB 30. And where he's going in drafts, I think he has a legitimate shot at starting 17 games, which isn't something you can say for other QBs going off the board in that range. For those looking for that late life raft, the preserver, when they're in QB hell in a specific best ball room, Shuck's there waiting for you at 207 ADP. He's not a terrible click in my eyes, which I never thought I'd say that, but I think I've maybe maybe I'm too far into the summer of fantasy football right now.
no, I look, listen, hear me out. In a three quarterback build, in round 18 of your best ball draft, I think you could do worse than Tyler Shuck, right? Like I really do. Um, there could be some exciting moves. At the end of the day, look, I'll be honest. This is not a team I'm excited about, if we're being honest, but there are some players that can make plays, right? Like you look at it, you mentioned Chris Olave. I mean, there's concerns about his health, but when he's healthy, he's a very good receiver. Rashid Shaheed, explosive player, can make some big plays. Brandon Cooks, yes, he's well beyond his prime, but he still has a little bit of, gas left in the tank. Very little. It's not completely empty, but it's not, it's less than the quarter tank. All right. And then we got Juwan Johnson here. Like, there are some players, Alvin Kamara at the back, like, there are some players on this offense.
And the offensive line too. I think it's a decent
Correct.
unit.
Correct. It is. I love when they drafted Kelvin Banks, bro. Like he was one of my favorite linemen in this draft class. Like when you look at it, the tackles, like he was one of my favorite. I think you and I spoke a lot about him once, and I know that now the draft, like I thought that was a steal when they got him. So for me, yeah, I like that pick quite a bit. But yeah, man, I just I have him as a QB3 in a super flex, two quarterback league. Like that's
Yeah,
where I'm viewing Tyler Shock. Like I can't do
that's
it,
appropriate.
you know. But I'll tell you this, I don't see it's that much of a downgrade from Bryce Young. Like if you're torn between the two, just take the discount on Tyler Shock. Like just me. But again, I do think there's gonna be a ton of volatility here. And just be prepared for that. So let's jump right into it. I said it. I mean, I let the secret out. QB3 for me. Is he a QB3 for you as well?
Yeah, the 26-year-old rookie. It's hard to put him up higher than that. This dude is so damn old. Um,
Wasn't
but I
that
said
Michael Penix too? Like, wasn't he a 26-year-old rookie or was he 25?
I think Penix was 24.
Oh, was he? He
Yeah,
feels old as
he wasn't
shit.
as bad. Yeah, he wasn't on the Brandon Weeden plane, but Shuck definitely is on that plane of prospects.
Yeah.
But I will say, given the draft capital, I think there's a very long leash for this guy to legitimately play 17 games and for this team to just see what they have in this guy. They spent the number 8 pick in round 2 to select him, so that's high draft capital. They know what they've got in Rattler and Hayner. We saw it last season. There's nothing there. So I think this guy should have many chances. We talk about the defense being a unit that's not particularly special. We could see a lot of trailing game scripts where I'm going with this, where we got that mobility out there trying to pick up random first downs late in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter fantasy points still count, guys. I think there's some upside here. Not excited to say anything better than QB3 status, but could he sneak into the top 24 season's end? Sure. I don't think so, but sure.
I think there's always the chance though. Like there's always the chance. And I agree with you where he has a long leash here because you look at the other options. Like you said, they already know. Like it's look, they tried 2023 with Hayner. That fourth round quarterback didn't work out. And you tried last year, Spencer Rattler, fifth round quarterback, not working out. And let's give our boy Tyler Shuck here a little bit
Yep.
and see what happens. So we'll
I think
see, man.
we're gonna get a little Jameis Winston vibes too, because this guy likes to search for the big play down the field. He's got a cannon of an arm. I think he might endear himself to you. Just wait, just wait.
Listen carefully. If he's throwing 40 to 50 times a game, I'm gonna like him. I'm gonna be invested in him at that point. I'm gonna be going to waivers. If I see that first game, like 42, 43 pass attempts, I'm just gonna go to waivers, not talk to anyone about it. Take them, see what happens from there. But yeah, I'm into those highly volatile, high upside plays. Especially in super flex leagues at your QB2. Um, Again, this could be one of those situations where if you go anchor quarterback with your QB1, you could get someone like a Tyler Shock as your, QB 2, 3, like and just kind of rotate them. I don't see many instances where you're going to do it, maybe, but like you said, if you start seeing the rushing upside and the big plays and all that stuff coming to fruition, then there could be some serviceable numbers there. And he could also be trade bait to some, for those who are hurting at quarterback. So yeah, I'm in. I'm in when it comes to that deep in drafts and it kind of, league settings, but I'm not overly optimistic. Um, Let me see in group. Look, if it wasn't because Chris Olave has so much injury risk, I think I'd be more excited about investing in him. But it's come to the point where he becomes very difficult to trust. Where are you at with him, man? Because he's been someone that I haven't been able to click on draft. Like I just can't do it. Do you feel the same, or are you buying at this moment?
Same page as you, same wavelength. We posted our wide receiver outlooks for as part of our draft guide earlier this past week, and Olave is in a tier well below his current ADP, which is saying something. He's currently wide receiver 37 in ADP, which 37's outside the top 36. So by definition, he's technically a wide receiver 4. Drafters are taking into the consideration all the injury history, the concussion history. He had 2 last year, bringing his total up to 5 since joining the NFL. And this guy's still on his rookie contract. There's a lot of concern here for sure. I this guy's productive when healthy. He's a baller. He's been one of those Ohio State alums that has come in and just dominated. But there's just such volatility here in terms of his ability to be on the field. There's a new coaching staff. There's an inexperienced quarterback. I just think there's a lot of question marks for Olave. So I'm bearish. I'm ranking him well below consensus. He's not a player that will be in any of my redraft start sit teams just simply because I prefer going elsewhere. Namely Rashid Shaheed. I think Shaheed's the guy that's the one to benefit the most. He's also no stranger to missing time. We've got to mention that too. Shaheed's not the perfect bill of picture perfect health, but he paced his team in targets prior to injury last year. He's a big play waiting to happen. Tons of gains of 25 plus, 50 plus yards over his portfolio. The addition of Kellen Moore, I think that should be a net positive in terms of this offense, at least playing faster and having overall better play volume relative to what we saw the season prior with Dennis Allen and what was it, a special teams coach that took over for a minute. Um, so like we know the volatility that comes with Shaheed. He's that typical vertical boom bust guy. Embrace that, ride it as a flex play or a weekly bye week play, or make him a best ball target only of yours. That choice is up to you guys as drafters. I'm going to be targeting him in both kinds of formats. He's just been super consistent and super productive when given the opportunity. So if he stays healthy, I think he has a chance to outperform both Olave and Cooks. Cooks being another concussion heavy receiver. With Shaheed potentially being a, I don't know, 6 to 9 target guy, I'm going to give him a wider range, just given that there's a lot of unknowns here in New Orleans.
It's just I know small sample size, but last year he was wide receiver 31 in PPR points per game. Like he averaged 13.6 fantasy points per game. And like you mentioned, it is volatile, right? But this is a situation where there's a potential path to him being the wide receiver one, right, on this offense on any given week, simply out of injuries. Like honestly, like Olave could be missing time, Cooks could be missing time. Like it could happen, right? And you mentioned you prefer investing in Shaheed over Olave. We're talking about a 4 round difference. Olave is going around 6, wide receiver 37. Shaheed going wide receiver 56, round 10 on average. Like, yeah, at that point, you're not risking as much. You look at some of the players that Olave, that they're going around Olave, and I find it's difficult to make a strong case like for Olave there, you know? So I'm with you, man. I don't know if I'll have Ed. I don't know if I'm gonna go completely 0% Olave this season if I'm doing 100 lineups, but it's going to be under that 8.3% of the consensus. Like that's kind of where I'm going to be at. And I prefer taking shots on Shaheed, understanding there is volatility. And I think you described it best, right? It depends on your tolerance for variance. It depends on what your goal is. Is he going to be your flex? Is he going to be a bye week replacement? If you're doing a redraft setting, that's ultimately your decision. The way I know the way you and I draft, he's probably going to be wide receiver 6 on our rosters. Like, 5, I would say that, and I don't even think so, but he'd probably be like my wide receiver 6. And that's where I'll be comfortable taking him. Like, I really will be comfortable taking him, knowing that he can exceed that by a wide margin, and become a wide receiver 3/flex play for me on a week to week basis if all things line up and play out, the way it can. You mentioned Juwan Johnson signing that you like that. Where are we at with him as far as the tight end position? Is he still a tight end 2 for you, or do you view him in that low end 1, high end 2 range?
No, he's tight end 29 in ADP, and that feels spot on where there's going to be some variability for sure because this is also an offense that will likely have multiple tight ends on the field at once. We saw that with Taysom, with Juwan, with Foster Moreau last year. Different offensive scheme, but that doesn't mean they're going to be just immediately move away from that given the lack of other options at wide receiver. Johnson to me just feels like a great tight end two to throw into best ball formats. That's it. I'll be having some swings on him and uh, best ball on pretty much every platform. I was going to say something about FFPC, but it really doesn't matter to me. I think Juwan Johnson, given the lack of competition for targets, makes for a viable option across the board.
I think that's kind of the way we view it, right? Like just better suited for best ball, not really a redraft guy. Maybe some of that will be on waivers. You fire up on a bye week or in case of an injury, but not someone you really want to count on each and every week for a consistent floor at a very volatile position. Let's look at the backfield here. We got Alvin Kamara coming off a pretty good season when you look at it. Some of that exceeded expectations based on where he was being drafted last year. We were I know you were you big on him last year? I don't know. You were not. But some of us where he finished running back 9 in PPR scoring, averaging 19 fantasy points per game. Just I exceeded expectations, over 300 opportunities. He played 14 games last year. I was in last year. I'm out this year. It's kind of how I'm doing it. And you look at where he's going right now. I don't know, man. I'm not interested. Are you in on Kamara this year? I know you weren't in last year, but are you buying this year?
No, I was wrong last year. Kamara outproduced what I had expected from him in this offense. 16.3 carries per game. That was the second highest rate of his 8-year career. But yeah, he's turning 30. He's coming off a groin injury. A lot of his fantasy values stem from the pass catching work, which I envision is probably not going anywhere. But he averaged 6.4 targets per game, highest rate in the entire league among all running backs. I'm worried about the durability. So I will probably be going elsewhere. I just think there's better clicks on the board when his name's at the top of the queue. So that's my view.
Yeah, man. I mean, David Montgomery, James Conner, Travion Henderson, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones. It's just five guys I named that are going behind him at the running back position. Forget all the other positions that I feel a little bit better about. Maybe
I want
some of
some
the
breakaway. I want some breakaway juice. This guy
yeah,
just doesn't have it anymore at this point in his career.
I don't disagree with you, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was excited last year because I was expecting the volume and I was expecting, we knew that, that the system was gonna be favorable for the running back. He was able to, for the most part, stay healthy. 14 games. He didn't play all season, but for
Yeah.
the most part, he was able to, stay healthy. I am concerned about durability issues this year coming off that massive usage season there for him, over 300 opportunities there. So I am a bit bearish when it comes to Alvin Kamara this year. You mentioned, and I mentioned durability issues. We know Kendrick Miller, the Kendrick Miller experiment has not worked out there. They drafted another running back here in Devin Neal in round 6. I still think I've been asked this question. I still think Miller is the guy behind Kamara. I still think he's the RB2 in this depth chart, but I'm not looking at him as a must-have handcuff at this point, right? I don't view it as such. Where are you at with the running back behind Kamara? Is this a clear-cut handcuff situation? Do you look at it more of a cloudy situation? How are you viewing this?
Yeah, Cloudy sounds more right. I made the notes here that I think this is a position battle to watch this offseason because, like you said, Miller's had opportunities. Previously, they've largely been hamstrung due to coaching staffs, but it's a new staff here who has no ties to Kendra. So maybe there's a chance a fresh start helps for Kendra. This is also a team that also just added Devin Neal, who had a very productive career at Kansas, multiple 1,000-yard campaigns, multiple double-digit touchdown campaigns. I'm just keeping an open mind, waiting to see how this one plays out, hoping we get some good news from beat reporters here in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to view it. You kind of just sit back, see how it's working out, see who's getting the buzz, see who's expected to be that number 2 back. Um, but I'm I'm not handcuffing him. I'm just simply not.
That's
Um,
fair. The ADP difference between these guys, they're both in the 200 plus section, so it's the very tail end of your draft, and they're only separated by 12 picks, so nobody really knows for sure at this point.
anything else here with the Saints?
No.
All right, let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we have a new offensive coordinator here. Josh Grizzard is now the offensive coordinator there. Liam Cohen went to Jacksonville, and a lot of you are going to know him of Duval. That was a pretty good clip there out of him. But I think that's a big loss for the Bucks. I think Cohen did a great job here. Like you look at what this offense was capable of doing last season. You look at, how well Baker Mayfield played. When you lose a coordinator that does so many good things, the next season, there's, a little bit to be concerned about. But I'll be honest, I think Rizard's a good addition here for this, Tampa Bay Bucks. Along with that, obviously the coaching, they obviously they drafted another receiver here this season. They've added some key pieces to the secondary. They've added defense. Here you mentioned defense was, somewhat of an issue for the Bucks, could be an issue this year. They also lost a lot of defense. They lost Robert Hainsey there. That was a big loss, their center. Talk to me about the Bucks here, with losing the coordinator, some of the moves. Should fantasy managers be concerned in 2025 about this offense, and should there expect some regression to be made?
It's a fair question after seeing how well Liam Cohen elevated this entire unit. The good thing is Grizzard was on this coaching staff last year during that whole ride. He was the pass game coordinator for this squad, so he was playing a role in those game plans of helping Baker Mayfield reach his ceiling. Now they've got some extra weapons to work with here, and Egbuka, very, very talented pass catcher. I remember seeing a quote from Jason Light, the general manager, saying they would have been sick if somebody else had drafted him. I think they've got some great plans for him, who really helps their three receiver sets. Where I know a lot of people want to pencil Egbuka into the slot only role because it's what he primarily played at Ohio State, but he had a superior yards per route run rate on the outside than he did on the in the slot. And given the dichotomy of what Godwin does slot versus perimeter, he's historically been a very, very good slot receiver, more of a middling perimeter guy. So if they can keep Godwin in the slot and let Igbuka learn on the outside, sporadically spend some time on the slot from here and there, I think they are set up for a lot of success and repeating last year's passing game productivity, which was just through the goddamn roof. This team was so awesome uh, in terms of elevating the fantasy potential for Baker, who put in up a career year, and I'm just very, very excited. This team, like when you see a pass heavy offense, I get excited. They're the teams that are the ones that are able to put up points at will. The teams that you can never count out. Um, they're just not bulletproof, but they're designed to be competitive in almost any kind of game situation or game environment. So I'm very, very excited to see how this one plays out here in 2025 for them.
Yeah, you mentioned Baker Mayfield like elevating that game. 4,500 passing yards last year, 41 touchdowns. Just a career season from him there in Tampa with Cohen it's calling the play. So I am excited as well for this offense. I kind of see what happens here. Um, I do expect a little bit of maybe slight regression. I don't think that they're just going to completely come out and fall flat. I don't think that's the case. I think there's just so much talent on this offense when you look at it from the receiving groups. I mean, it's a very stacked receiving group. You mentioned Nick Buka, someone that we've been excited about. I believe I have him I have him in our dynasty league, in the Fantasy Guru Dynasty League. I believe he's on my team there. Chris Godwin returning from injury. I think we have to see, what happens there. But I mean, a healthy Chris Godwin is a very, very good receiver. Mike Evans, we talked about him earlier, we're just comparing McMillan to him, but Mike Evans has been one of the most consistent receivers since entering the league. We talk about underrated. I think he's slightly underrated as well, like or goes overlooked, man. I think he's finally made the case like now, but he's been someone that's been doing it since he stepped into the NFL, like year in and year out, just consistent, consistent, consistent. Um, you have Kate Otten as at your tight end. I think we saw last year's above average tight end, someone who can really give you production when needed. They have Jalen McMillan, like Sterling Shepard. Like these are all secondary pieces. I understand that for and Trey Palmer, but some interesting pieces here. I like this offense. I think they have a lot of talent. They have the right pieces. It's a matter of can they continue to keep going and keep on without the guy who was behind it though, right? The behind the scenes guy. And I'm interested to see if they can continue. I hope so. I'm rooting for it, and whatnot, but it remains to be seen. I'm excited to watch this team as well, like you are. Let's look at it from a fantasy standpoint here. Baker Mayfield, top five quarterback last season. Are you treating him as a QB1 in 2025, or are you not willing to chase last year's performance?
I don't even know if it's chasing. I think it follows up. Just a fantastic environment in terms of the offensive line, the pass catching weapons. Um, I'm pretty bullish on him. Maybe last year was a ceiling in terms of yardage and that type, given the defense's shortcomings last year. A lot of injuries in the secondary last season for the Bucks. If they stay healthy, maybe that kind of dials itself back naturally. But I still think there's a lot of ceiling potential here for Baker to put up a top 12 ceiling, despite him not being one of the most mobile QBs. He's probably a tier below what I believe Burrow does at his best, but I'd put Baker in with anybody else that's the non-mobile.
I agree 100%. So since he's been with the Buccaneers, he's been QB, a top 12 fantasy quarterback. He was QB 11, QB 3, right? I'm not, or QB 5, I'm sorry. So QB 11 and QB 3 since he's playing with the Bucks the last two seasons. I think top 12 quarterback. He kind of falls in that Justin Herbert like tier, like those like those that don't really rush a lot. the CJ Strouds of the world, like not the high rushing, but the guys that can do it with their arm and get you a lot of fantasy points. I'm totally fine with investing in Baker Mayfield as a QB1. I'm totally fine with having him as my QB1. Um, I'm not expecting top five finish again. I will be honest, I'm not expecting that, but I do think 10 to 12, 9 to 12, very, very within range for someone like, Baker Mayfield, who's done it each of the last two seasons, right? Like, so keep that in mind there. I'm buying just like you are. When we look at this receiving group, I'm still I'm still in on Mike Evans. Like I still think he's going to be a big part of this offense. My only concern is, man, there are so many mouths to feed. Like there are so many mouths to feed, and they have so much talent that do you think there's going to be a little bit of volatility when it comes to these pass catchers, or are we here sitting down and saying, well, you know what? We can expect another 24-25% target share for Mike Evans this year.
It's tough with Egbuka. I think he really throws a wrench in there, but this is also a team that said the Egbuka pick was for the present and for the future, where maybe it's less of an immediate impact and more of a later down the road one. I'll keep in mind that the start that Chris Godwin had last year, he was weeks 1 through 6 or 1 through 7. He was the number one fantasy scorer right behind Jamar Chase or tied with Jamar Chase. Um, Fantastic in terms of him getting off to a hot start last year. If that continues where he and Mike Evans are both doing very, very well and being super productive, it's going to just roll around those two guys for sure. Evans, any given week, he's got 20 plus fantasy point potential. Just depends if he connects on the deep shots or not. But the opportunity is going to be there. I'm still interested too. Just he's probably not a player that I will typically draft in a start sit format. He's more of a best ball guy for me, Mike Evans, that is. Godwin, I'd rather have as the start sit because I just kind of prefer the floor of a guy like Godwin relative to what Evans offers. Who Evans, let me read his stats over the first 7 games when Chris Godwin was healthy. 23, 7, 3, 23, 23, 5, 10. So like there's some volatility there in terms of the per game basis on fantasy points. Um, that said, this is still a team I envision passing heavily. There's a lot of meat on the bone here.
So for perspective, like Godwin, and he played 7 games, 27% target share, average 8.9 targets per game. I was team Godwin last year. I was buying. I had too much exposure to him. Unfortunately, he got hurt. But I agree with you. Like, so all the reports indicate that they're hopeful that he's ready for week 1, that he's
Mhm.
hit all his milestones. So all the reports on Chris Godwin are positive at this moment. But these things are very unpredictable, right? Any setback can cause a multi-week, absence, whatever the case may be. Right now, so far, everything's looking good. All signs point towards him potentially being ready for week 1 or at least early in the season, right? Let's say maybe not week 1, but maybe week 2. It's a situation that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. I like the idea of investing in Godwin. I don't have I'm not against investing in Mike Evans in any format. I still think he's going to be like I think you're going to see over 50% of the target share between the two. Like that's kind of where I'm at. I think at worst you're looking at 48% of the target share between the two, like a 22-26. But I think you're going to see upwards of 24-26 makes a lot of sense for me here when you're looking at it. It's like that 50 mark range there. Egbuka, are you leaving for best ball format only at this moment? Are you okay with him in a redraft format? Obviously, Dynasty is different. We know we're taking him in Dynasty, but in a redraft format, how are you treating Ibuka?
He's a tough one because he's going at the time where there's a lot of players that I think have a better path to year one production. That said, he's one injury away, one setback for Godwin away from being that guy and falling into that same category of being a guy ready to inherit a lot of opportunity and workload. I will be mixing him in as a bench play, but there are guys I prefer there. Like Jaden Higgins immediately comes to mind as a guy's got similar ADP. I think Higgins has less of a hurdle for year one targets for sure. I prefer him flat out over Egbuka, but maybe I'm double dipping at the turn of a draft. I might double tap Higgins and then Igbuka with Igbuka just being my wide receiver six that I'm just kind of marinating on and then not taking another receiver for the rest of the draft. Um, so I'm comfortable taking him in all formats. Yeah, I think this guy is one of the best wide receivers. He's just got such a high floor once he actually has the ability to be on the field and accruing targets. He'll be one of those where you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube kind of situations.
So I look at it as like in the redraft format, if you're investing in him, it's with the intention of having him on your bench for as long as possible. Like you have him, you're probably not going to start him on early in the season, assuming Godwin's healthy week one, assuming everyone's healthy week one. You're not going to start Buka, but he could be that receiver that, like you mentioned, one injury away from being a potential league winner. Like he
Mm.
could produce high end numbers. Like he has the talent, the ability to do so. It's a matter of where the opportunities to be there, like you said, right? So I look at it as like you draft him as your wide receiver six, wide receiver seven, depending on how you draft and you say week one was not great, week two was not great, week three was not great. I'm not going to say, oh, are we parting ways with Ibuka? If you drafted Ibuka and you're talking to us about cutting him in week three, then you drafted him with the wrong intention. That's how I would view it. And I know we get a lot of those questions, so I wanted to be clear about that because he's the kind of player that you're just going to stash for as long as possible and hope that at some point in the season his role increases, whether it's because he's earned it, because they're missing players, whatever the case may be, right? But that he's earned that opportunity and that he's able to put his talent and skill set to work with those opportunities. Like that's how I'm going to view him. I'm not viewing him as someone I'm going to rely on. And I don't know how you feel about that, but that I will
Yeah.
personally stash him as long as possible. Kind of what I did with Jalen Wright last year, and that never came to fruition. Like same concept, same mentality, right? Same thing. Like I'm not drafting this player to utilize him to use him now. I'm drafting him to the potential down the road. There. Kate Auden, he was a fantasy darling for like 2 3 weeks, and then just I I only think that his path to opportunities here is going to be based on multiple injuries piling up for Tampa Bay. I think we saw it last year when Mike Evans missed a few games. They were down Chris Godwin. Kate Auden was their guy. Mike Evans returned. Eh, nothing. Where are you at with Auden? Are you chasing that small window of those games and seeing, all right, well, there is potential, or do you just understand that there's going to be some volatility here with him?
No, I'm not really like chasing the big target games because I don't think that's repeatable. What I'm chasing is that this is a top five scoring offense last year in points per game. This is a team that was number four in EPA per dropback, number three in pass success rate. This is a team number two in passing touchdowns. Like that's what I'm chasing here when I'm looking at Kate Otten. Really prefer to take him just in stacks with Bucks whenever I've already got Godwin or Evans on my squad already. But that's really it. I just think he's a tight end too. You're tacking on to Buck stacks in tournaments.
Yeah, I see it the same way. And that tight end outlooks, I have him as a tight end too as well. Not someone that, I'm looking for as a tight end one. I understand, that he was tight end 12 in PPR points per game, but you look at the production here, right? Like you look at the numbers and it came on that week 7 through 9 where he had 18, 29, and 21 fantasy points.
Bingo.
Right? Like we have to look at it, right? We can't just look at like, oh, we have to look at the actual numbers. When you look at that, like before that, he had 2 games. So weeks 1 through 6, he had 2 games of 11 fantasy points, and then he had 1.5. He had a negative 0.4. All right, 7.4 and then 9.5. Then he peaked when everyone got hurt. Like Chris Godwin got hurt in week 7. That game, 18 fantasy points. In the next 2 games, I believe Evans missed the next 2 games as well. 29, 21. Then week 8 through week 15, it was 8.5, 4, 6, and 10, and 4.4. That's it. Like, understand what you're investing in. And I think that you're going to see more of that kind of up and down this season when everyone's healthy. And with the addition of Ibuka, right? Like, to me, that's huge. So Tyler two for me as well, Tyler. Let's look at this backfield. And we had a change of events last year, huh? It started with Rashad White, and as soon as we got the Bucky Irving look, it was like, all right, bye-bye, Rashad White. I'm sorry. Thank you for your services, but It's Bucky Irving time. Um, Bucky Irving, clear cut number one running back in this backfield going into the season without a doubt, right?
Absolutely. One putting one final stamp on the Kate Otten disdain is the fact that this Bucks team was top five in target share to the running back group.
Yeah.
So Irving and Rashad White carving out a sizable role too. Irving just really turned it up to close out the year. I'm looking at his stats from weeks 12 through 18. So after their week 11 bye, he averaged 18 plus fantasy points per game. A lot of work in the pass game. Very explosive guy who's able to take any kind of touch. And one of my favorite bets last year that I was continually making on a week to week level was the over on his longest rush. Great line, pass every team. Anytime they did decide to run, it was usually against light boxes, and we just saw him take advantage of it. I think this guy is a very special talent. He can do it all. I think he's officially put Rashad White down at RB2 status with Irving in that RB1 role. Some people are going to be questioning, do they take him as their RB1 for their fantasy depth chart this year? That's a fair question. I am willing to do that because I think these PPR backs are absolute studs with high floors. Um, and Rashad White's had some durability issues too. Like I don't know. I think that there's a chance that Irving maintains what we saw last year and maybe even gets better. He was just a rookie. Where are you on White? I'm sorry, on Bucky Irving. He's a interesting player to me, and I think at worst he's probably a back end RB1.
So on White, I'm out. Like it just we saw it last year. It was Irving. Irving took over. Irving looks super explosive. He's some of that dual threat ability. It really always intrigues me with the running backs when you have that dual threat ability because like you mentioned, especially in PPR formats, it's so valuable that additional, the workload in the passing game. I so I don't know if I want to take Bucky as my number one running back. I'm not completely against it, but there are other running backs. So like when you look at where he's going RB9. I kind of feel more comfortable with Josh Jacobs, who's going behind him. I feel a little bit more comfortable with Brees Hall, who's going behind him, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, so for me, maybe that front end running back two, right, with that RB1 upside is where I'm at. But then again, right, he's going off the board in round two. I'm normally not taking a running back in round two. Like I'm normally not taking a running back in round two. I'm almost always taking a wide receiver there. But if I'm taking a running back, I'm probably gonna take some of those other guys, before I take them. I feel like there's less, and I still think, okay, I do. So let's pull up. So I'm going to pull up some of the numbers here. So, and this is just last year. Rashad White, 56% of snaps. Bucky Irving, 45%. Bucky Irving out, more opportunities, 259 compared to 201 for Rashad White. I think we can get to that 300 range as far as opportunities is concerned for Bucky Irving, but I do think White will eat into some of those opportunities at times this season. I think that there could be some opportunities in the red zone that White takes over. I believe Bucky Irving is the number one guy here. I believe he's going to be the top running back in Tampa Bay. Does he have top 12 potential? Absolutely. I'm not ready to make that when you're looking at some of the running backs that are going behind him. I feel a little bit more comfortable. I feel like there's maybe a safer floor. And I know you like to swing for the upside. And maybe that's where we see a little bit different. I do think he has maybe more upside than any of those running backs I mentioned, right? For the exception of Brees Hall. Like Brees Hall to me can be a top five running back. Um, but am I against it if that's the route you take? No, I'm not against it. If you tell me, hey, I have Bucky Irving as my RB1 and I'm not going to say, well, that's not a good idea. That's not, those words would not come out of my mouth. But I do feel more comfortable as a RB2 for me.
I'll also note that we are talking a lot of round two stuff with Bucky Irving on Underdog. I just pulled up his ADP on Sleeper, which is a home league. It's 42. So we're
Yeah.
looking at a round four selection. Far different discussion.
Yes.
Far more comfortable click there in a home league. I wanted to mention that just because there's sometimes a disparity between where best ball leagues draft players and where you'll typically see it in your home league.
In the sleeper, you said he's so 42nd overall. RB, what is he being taken as? Because
I think 13, I think.
see that I'm more comfortable with that. Like it
Yes.
sounds stupid, right? Like you're listening to just like, well, he's RB9 and one, RB13 the other. RB13 is high end RB2. Like that's what that is. And that's exactly where I'm comfortable at. I'm pretty sure Brees Hall's going ahead of him in that sleeper app. I'm pretty sure Kyron Williams going ahead of him in that sleeper app. Like these are guys that I mentioned that are going after him in these best ball drafts where I just feel a little bit better. There's risk when it comes to Williams with the injury. I get it, but we also know what his volume is going to be like when he's healthy, right? Um, so that's the only thing. But I think that's a great point. Again, like this is why like this discussion is important because there are so many different league formats and league setup. And I think what you said there is a huge difference. Taking Bucky Irving in round two versus round four is a significant difference for me. And I think you're
Mm.
looking at a much different value of round. So I'm all in on Bucky Irving in round four. I'm all out in Bucky Irving in round two. Like I'm just being transparent and honest here. Um, Anything? Are you handcuffing with White here?
No, because I think Sean Tucker is such a beast, man. This dude, whenever given opportunities, he can rip off chunk gains, very athletic. No, I'm not cuffing here at all. I think Sean Tucker is a guy that can honestly mix in sporadically. Maybe it's only 5 to 6 touches a game, or maybe that is at the high mark. Maybe it's more of a 5 to 6 touches in one singular game. But with that, he could clear 50 plus rushing yards. I like this guy quite a bit.
And just a couple of handcuffs, I guess, and I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching it. But look, you got Roshan, Tank Bigsby, Tyler Algier, Trey Benson, Spears, Ray Davis, Isaac Guerrero. Who else am I? That's it. Braylon Allen, all going in that kind of range where Rashad White's going. I feel a lot better about, I would say more than half of those guys. Like really do here. So I'm not too excited to be handcuffing here. I think if you draft Bucky Irving, you don't necessarily have to rush out and get Rashad White there. Um, Anything else here in this offense that we didn't
I think we
discuss?
covered it pretty well.
All right, there we go. There we go. Tyler, like we've done each and every episode of these team previews here. Let's rank these players, these positions by the division here. We'll start at the quarterback position. As we always do, we got the Bucks, the Saints, the Panthers, and the Falcons. Do you want to go first here?
Sure. Let me go with Baker, who I think is in his own tier as a
Yes.
possible top 12 pick for anybody. Then we've got a jumbled mess. I'm going to go Bryce Young over Michael Penix. We kind of talked about that a little bit ago. You can flip flop them if you'd like. No argument here. And then Shuck as the QB4.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you. I obviously Penix over Young for me. But again, it's that bottom, that second quarterback, bottom tier, high end QB3, kind of where we have them. Like that's there's no excitement with anyone here besides Baker Mayfield for me, if we're being honest. Um, let's look at the running back position here. We got Bucky Irving, Alvin Kamara, and I'm not listing the minority yet, but the NFC South running backs here. Bucky Irving will be, oh no, it's Bijan Robinson, number one. So we got Bijan Robinson, number one, Bucky Irving, number two. This was tough for me between Hubbard and Kamara. I'm gonna go Hubbard over Kamara. So
Same.
I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with Bijan, Bucky Irving, Shuba Hubbard, Alvin Kamara, and then I'm gonna prioritize Tyler Algier over Rashad White as the handcuff here. Those are my top five.
I'm with you. That's exactly how I would play it. So
All
give
right.
me Algier over White.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the way to go here. Let's look at the wide receivers here for the NFC South, Tyler. I think a lot of interesting options, right? At the position. There's several key pieces here, but where are you at with them? You want to give your top five?
Let's go with Drake London to kick it off. Um, I'm not sure who I have between Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That's a close one to me. Oh wait, I've got this written. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Yeah, you got your wide receiver outlooks.
Yeah, I pulled it and made it its own little Excel sheet. Yeah, I'm gonna go Evans, Tet McMillan. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go Drake London, Tet McMillan, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin.
I know you want to say Shaheed.
I'm thinking Shaheed's my next guy. Yeah, I'm thinking Shaheed then Olave. They're pretty close. Yeah, then Igbuka. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
All right, I'm gonna go with Drake London, Mike Evans. I wish we had like I wish we knew 100% Chris Godwin was going to play week one. He would be my number two if he was 100% going to play week one. But I'm going to go Mike Evans number two, Chris Godwin number three, Tet McMillan number four, and then the mystery box of New Orleans. Like, let's just say, let's call it what it is, a mystery box of New Orleans, as you like to call it. Um, I just don't trust Olari's going to stay healthy, man. Like I really don't. That's a big fear of mine here this season. And maybe it's wrong to look at it from that perspective, but it's really playing into my decision making with Olave this season. When healthy, he is very, very productive, but when healthy is the issue there. So yeah, I'm gonna go with you. Shaheed number five, man. If Olave were to stay healthy, he'd be there, but I'm just not sure, and I'm not confident in it. Um, the tight ends in this division. Hmm.
Do we say Kyle Pitts first? He's the first in
Uh,
ADP.
yeah, Kyle Pitts, Otten, and
Juwan.
Johnson, and then I'm just not. We're not. I'm not doing Tommy Tremble. I'm not doing that. So we'll leave it at that. We will leave it at that. I'm not even doing Sanders for those who are interested in Sanders over Tremble. I'm not doing that either. Um, so we'll do our top three here because I just don't see any. Like even in this 16 team league, I don't see the Carolina Panthers tight end being valuable. Like it would have to be a 40 team league or something like where you're like um yeah, so that's how I have it, Tyler. All right, man. We do this every show, but I let everyone know what you got cooking, what you got coming up. We got the draft guide obviously live on the site. You got a ton of content coming out for that. I know it might be redundant to those who listen to each and every episode, but for those of you who they gotta listen, then they gotta find out what we got cooking over there at fantasyguru.com. So why don't you get everyone know what you got coming up and where they can find you on the social media, brother?
Yeah, it's June. We're cooking season over here at Fantasy Guru. A lot of good stuff over there. We just launched our draft guide. I'll be putting up our best ball guide here this upcoming Monday on June 9th, which will have all kinds of roster construction, strategy, advanced tactics, players to target, players to fade, rankings that you can upload and use as a CSV, all kinds of good stuff over there. Introduction to it if you've never played it before. So if you're a seasoned best ball player or just playing for the first time, we got you covered there. The following week, we've got our strategy guides that come out in terms of should we go elite quarterback this year? Is this a year to go late round tight end? Is this a year to go zero RB? We'll have all those pieces out the following week on what is that, the 16th, I believe. And then we got our podcast coming in July. We got plenty of content coming down the pipeline. Lots of stuff over at fantasyguru.com. You can check all my content out over there. Social media, check me out on Twitter at Tyler Buecher, Buecher. And once again, Armando, appreciate you having me on for this series. It's been a blast, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for hopping on with me for all of these episodes and all of these breakdowns, man. It's been fun. Even when you were off for a week, when you were on vacation, I said, I'm not recording these without Tyler. I'm not doing it. It's been fun. We've been having a blast, man, and I have enjoyed this. And I'll definitely gonna have you back on very soon. You know how it goes. I would call you and say, hey, you want to talk some football with me if you're available, and if you are, we'll do it again. So I definitely appreciate you joining me for this series, man. Like Tyler said. You can find all of our work over at fantasyguru.com. We got the draft guide going live. We got so much content there. Keep an eye out for the strategy pieces that are coming out very soon. We got the best ball, the dynasty, just so much between now and really the start of the season, man. It just does not stop. We got tools, we got charts, we got content, we got everything. We got everything. So make sure you're checking that out there. Tyler, again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for breaking these team previews down with me. It's been a blast, man. You guys can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. You can Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Remember, folks, if you enjoy the content, join the podcast, join everything, please make sure you like, follow, love, rate, review, whatever it is, wherever it is you are consuming it. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. For the great Tyler Buecher, I am Armando Marsal. Hopefully, you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.